And the handball and overlap run. Ashcroft from the middle with the finish. Terrific. From the top of the 50, Barris to ground. He thought he was taken high. Another opportunity. And Dunkley somehow got it to roll the perfect way. Ping it forward inside 50, Archie with the give. Rayner on the fly. Steadies, fires and goals. Quick response from Brisbane. Since the bye is able to give it a bit of rest. Feeling better and he's dominating games. The two-time Brownlow medalist. He can do it all. Lachie Neale.
And he turns and goes on that left. Drives it long. Goal square. Bailey's down there. Loman.
Changed his mind a couple of times. Through to Neale. Looks up. Open goal square. Long ball. Cameron the Shepherd. Neale the goal. And that'll seal the deal for the Lions.
The Brisbane Lions fancast is back after what has been called the banana peel game against the West Coast Eagles. Round 18, done and dusted, and would you bloody believe it, all the planets have aligned and the Brisbane Lions now find themselves in the top 4 and only half a game outside top 2, which is amazing to think when we were 2 and 5, reeling from that heinous loss to the GWS Giants down in Canberra. But, well, it is turning out to be one sort of a season, and here we are, top 4, baby. Would you bloody believe it? It has come at a cost, though. Jack Payne out for the next few weeks with what we forecast. The foot soreness that inevitably turned into the stress fracture. So fingers crossed we can get him back. But it has to be said that the players that came in did their job and did it quite well. Let's get into it. Let's have a chat about Round 18, the West Coast Eagles game that had the writing on the wall from about, Monday or Tuesday? We spoke about it on Monday that we had a bad feeling Adam Simpson was going to get shown the door, and then the next day it happened, and then the tensions just rose and rose every day that went on from there.
So it was a funny one because, obviously we mentioned that it could happen, and we were like, nah, it won't happen. But then Caroline Wilson on Footy Classified on Monday was like, he's in trouble. And whenever she says something, she is never wrong. Never wrong.
Yeah, say what you want about Caro. She's usually on the money.
Yeah, I don't understand why people seem to have a problem with the my sources tell me this. It's like, it's because of confidentiality. That's why she can't sort of say that it was Joe Blogs or Joe Danaher or something that told her. But me and my partner, we had to go and get our windscreen replaced on our car and dropped it down to the place where that gets done, the glass place, I guess. And there's a little pub next to it that we just sort of go in and wait for the 2 hours or whatever. And we walk in and it's all stereos blaring with Simo's see ya.
Yeah.
On the big screen and 3 blokes at the pub watching it. And we're oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's happened. He spoke really well. I feel like the whole stitch up to coach the last game was not really handled very well. And I'm kind of glad that he didn't for himself. Yeah, he's fine. He's good. I don't mind Adam Simpson, to be honest. I think he's a very, very good person and was a very, very good person for West Coast and was kind of a little bit mistreated. I understand the results speak for themselves, but, there isn't a great deal you can do sometimes, particularly when your club is misaligned with the direction you as a coach want to do, which I think we definitely lived in the end of Michael Voss's tenure with us.
Yep.
Where it was definitely a conflict. But I think what kind of happened from then on was that everyone kind of picked up the new coach bounce, and it's maybe they'll bounce and they'll come back. So it almost it got overblown and then became not a thing, which
I really hope that's
kind
true.
of the case.
I really hope that's true. But I mean, whatever the case was, we
won the game. So.
I know, but I mean, West Coast obviously came out with a point to prove, an emotional response to the week, and West Coast basically butchered every step of that throughout the week. And then when you heard he was going to toss the coin, you're like, oh really? That's it? But I think the speech before the game, the lead up and all that sort of stuff, I thought that was all pretty good. And as I said on Twitter, that if this was anyone but Brisbane, I would have really wanted West Coast to win that game. But it was us, so I was more nervous than I ever should have been watching West Coast Brisbane.
I would, I would put the new manager effect, new coach bounce at about 45 points.
Sure.
Just arbitrarily, I reckon it was worth about 45 points. So we not got away with it, but we just about managed it. But there were certain, mitigating circumstances within the game that I think, really kept West Coast in the game. But it was weird when Simo was talking before the game. I thought it might have been a bit nice for the West Coast boys to just sort of stop what they were doing and listen. And I thought Simo there also spoke very well to speak about himself within the club rather than himself as an individual, which really just goes to show who he is as a person. I did also like the fact that he just like booked it out of the Eagles jumper and into his like civvies ASAP.
Yeah.
That was quite funny.
It was a nice little...
was able to just like...
It was a nice West Coast jacket as well, like old school logo and everything, had a real 90s vibe to it.
We've seen a couple this week because I'm pretty sure there was like a Bulldogs one maybe or an Essendon one or something that someone was wearing earlier.
Oh yeah, Nick Hind in the speed kills. Oh. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like because I made the comment and then comms went mad for it like immediately after. So
yeah, that was awesome.
That often happens where I say something and then the commentator will say it and my partner just looks at me and it's just like the new brain. So. But yeah, no, they started pretty hot. Like it was a super high pressure game for the first couple of quarters, but bearing the lead here. So obviously the big story after we talked about it, and it was kind of interesting that I did talk a little bit about Darragh Joyce last week, even though Payne was apparently fine.
Well,
entirely not.
Yeah, in hindsight, we probably should have read the tea leaves there and known that while he was out of the VFL game, it was definitely his insurance in case Payne didn't pull up. So he was out with a foot soreness, came back and played the game against Adelaide. He didn't look his best, and people have said that, he wasn't really bearing weight on his foot all that much when he had the chance not to. He was wearing a moon boot throughout the week at training and stuff like that. So the fact that Darragh Joyce didn't play VFL last week probably should have been the indicator that, we're trying Jack Payne here, but there's... And like, foot soreness is just one of those ones that inevitably just blows out to be a stress fracture and weeks off. So he was the laid out.
Well, if you look at Tom Hawkins and how he had like a bit of soreness, then they look in and they're like, your foot is cooked, mate. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that can happen particularly when you're a big bloke carrying a lot of weight. So
I'm wondering if it's the same leg, because he had those ankle issues last year that sort of may have bled into this year a little bit. I wonder if it's the same thing and it's all sort of linked with, weight bearing and overcompensation, all that sort of stuff. Either way, he's out for what they say up to 6 weeks. So that should bring him back in time for finals, which will be handy. But I thought Darragh Joyce had a fine game. Like, obviously, people were blowing up at the idea of Darragh Joyce coming in because he didn't have the best game against Melbourne, and in his few games he has played for Brisbane, he hasn't exactly showered himself in glory, but I thought he was more than serviceable on the weekend. Obviously, Harrow stepped up and shared his bunch of the load yesterday, but Brain coming in to play a full game as well, which was great. Good to see him as not the sub and get a full game under his belt. He came in for starts and played really well as well. His ball use, his defending.
He was taller than... He's had good presence and he was flying at a lot of stuff, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Joyce, I didn't think Joyce was as bad as most people seem to think against Melbourne, and it's just an element of like, I think our problems defensively are not down to personnel.
No, it's definitely starts up the ground, but people don't realise that. Like, I get the frustration of having to choose Darragh Joyce, but we've literally got no one else in terms of key position defenders because the rest are out with knees. So
yeah, and we're not going to go short and just like play two because. It just, I think Froggy was playing a little bit taller. He was playing on Waterman, which is we kind of thought about, but we also thought that Jack Darling would be in the team, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know most of the West Coast dudes because I don't really care to.
Yeah.
And it's, if you were going to ask the West Coast people in 2018 if they knew most of the Lions people, and they'd be like, who the fuck is Jake Barrett?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you bang on, like exactly. So, more fool me, but it is what it is for the time being, and like given like a lot of teams have had a lot of injuries, but we've had kind of very pointed ones.
Yeah,
like pointed ones that have been really structurally damaging, or very good players, or they've caused things to have to change within the team like at a rate of knots, and that's like a massive credit to the team that they've managed to pick up their form because like. Whilst it's been hard for teams to get a roll on this season, there's an element as well of like if a team's not at their best, they're not winning. But we haven't been at our best, I'd say, for the last 3 weeks, and we've won all of those games. We weren't really at our best against St Kilda either. The only games where we've played particularly well were the Bulldogs game and the other one that I can't remember, which was probably, I think, the third game in that chain, Port Adelaide, where we killed them. Well, that truly was our best. But on the whole, most other teams at this point in time are losing these games that we're winning. You know, if they're slipping up, Sydney slipped up a little bit and lost twice.
Yeah.
You know, Carlton slipped up. They've lost 2 on the trot now. Is that right?
Yeah, GWS and Geelong now. No, not Geelong. Someone else. Fucking whoever
Who the fuck beat them? Bulldogs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And apparently the game of the season.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
A half-cooked bloody Bulldogs team had no right to win that, to be honest.
No, but I mean, game of the season kind of indicates like a good game rather than like your full forward kicking 3 goals 7.
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyway, we don't. I think it was just Fox Sport being like, this is an exclusive on Fox Footy, so we got to really big up the fact that, like, despite the fact we've had after the siren wins, 1 point wins, 5 draws, this one's the best. This 14-point, whatever. Anyway. Neither here nor there. So, yeah, they started hot West Coast, and it was pretty even contest, all things considered. Like, we were smashing them at clearance, seemingly. But
clearance and stoppage,
they were just killing us on transition. And immediately, I think it was like 3 goals in the back half. And it was like, funnily enough, one of the things that commentator Schofield got wrong on the day, where he was sort of like, yeah, the Lions are normally pretty good at defending transition. It's like, bro, have you watched us?
Yeah. We were. Like, the start of the year we were, but then I don't know if that coincided with us not being able to score as much. So we've sort of had to give up a little bit of that. And I don't know if it's whether by design or whether we simply just can't do both at the same time. But with our increased scoring has come our pretty poor defensive transition, and we will get into that a little bit later in the show because there's questions about it. And it's sort of like it's sort of the Collingwood game style from last year. It's like squeeze up, put the pressure on, but then it leaves our defenders one-on-one far too often, and we've just sort of had to rely on Harris and Lester and Payne winning those one-on-ones more often than not. And now with the injuries, it's just sort of leaving them a little bit exposed, and it's definitely leaving people like Connor McKenna very exposed. So that sort of stuff is happening a little bit too much, and it's plain for everyone to see. So if we can see it, then surely Fagan knows what's up. And he slightly touched on it in the post-match presser, but didn't go into a huge amount of depth on it like he did last week. So he knows it's a problem. It's obviously a problem. And it's the sort of thing that next week can get Sydney, and it's been pointed out by a few people, is, you can just see Nick Blakey running amok, if that's the sort of stuff we're going to have to deal with.
Potentially. I don't know Sydney's scoring patterns super well, whether they are a really strong back half team, but I'll have to check. I probably should have checked, but also, as we sort of said last week, I had to watch the game on delay, so I was sort of watching it at like 9 o'clock at night last night, so sorry. Haven't consumed all the media in between, so I haven't seen Fagan's presser or anything like that, but it's just the way that it is.
Yep.
KO tried to spoil the game on multiple occasions, just from the app skipping forward. So, speaking of KO, for the longest time, it was kind of a faceless organization that you couldn't complain to. I think if anyone is having trouble with KO, we should be messaging Hamish and Andy directly.
Sure.
Just to annoy them so that maybe something will happen, because they've now got a face, and it is Hamish Blake and the other one, Andy.
Yeah, when they're not doing those fucking Hubble ads that you have to see every other day.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When he's now KO accounts have now become Hubble.
Right.
So I don't know if you realize that. So you've got a Hubble account. Like the ads everyone's now got a Hubble account. It's like, because you made us.
Right. No, I didn't realize that. Okay. Sure.
So keep your eye out.
Okay, fair enough.
Eyes to the sky, eyes on the page, eyes on the footy. Man.
It's going to be hard to do votes this week because, unlike last week where there were 2 standouts and then a bit of a significant drop, I think there was a few contributors this week that sort of got us over the line. But I just want to have a talk about a few players across the day, starting with Cam Rayner, because I thought that was one of his better games for sure.
He was much more kind of impactful in terms of what he was sort of needing to do. I think it'd be amazing, like looking at his disposal to goals in the past like 4 or 5 weeks. Because he was 3 from 9 this week. He kicked 2 goals. He's putting himself about, and Schofield on commentary did a really. Is he related to the Schofield that's coaching?
I don't know,
because it was a bit of a wig out, but he was pretty good on commentary, I got to say.
Yeah, Will Schofield's all right. I don't mind him.
He kind of has an annoying voice and an annoying face. And to be honest, I should have brought this up last week when we were previewing, but like whenever I see him, I just think of Sam Skinner in his first game, absolutely bodying him in actually a tackle kind of similar to the Charlie Cameron Duggan one.
Yeah.
That absolutely killed him. And Dermot Brereton loved it. And just him getting bodied by a first gamer is really funny.
That was funny.
To me.
Yeah.
Let's not go too far into that. He was quite good on commentary. I liked that early on he sort of said like, you never get calls against you at West Coast, like that never happens. And then obviously because I was watching delayed, I wasn't able to sort of check things as they were going, but after the game you're like 18-9 free kicks, cool. Which is also funny because that meant that 1/3 of their free kicks resulted in 50-meter penalties, although marks, scratch that, who cares. The thing that kept West Coast in the game was that they weren't missing. So up until the last minute of the third quarter, they'd kicked 9 goals, 1.
Yeah.
I think they might have had like an out on the full or something like that, but 2 rush behinds. So they were 9-4 heading into 3/4 time with 2 rush behinds. It's like, man, that efficiency just kept them well in that game.
Yeah,
because
they did the same thing with the Gold Coast a few months ago. I think they ended up with like 14-3 or something like that.
Every metric we should have been absolutely hosing them. But just their sheer like emotive state and their kicking, they couldn't miss. And that was the big one for me. It just every time we kicked a goal, they hit back. We did a pretty good job, all things considered. And as far as like players, like Rayner stood up. The keys were good at times. Charlie kind of like huffed and puffed on Hoff.
Yeah.
Hoff's a good player. Hoff is bigger and he's also like sneaky quick, hey?
Yeah, he's taller and can match Charlie for speed. He got him last year when we towed West Coast up by 81 points and kept Charlie goalless. So, like, he's no slouch. He's done the job on Charlie before. So, it was no surprise when he went to him this year. And we'll see what happens next week. If, at this point, we don't know if Charlie's going to be playing. But Harry Cunningham did the same thing to him last year as well. Kept him goalless and shut him out of the game. So,
it was interesting. Like I kind of was. It's funny. Like True Footy is a West Coast guy, and I always tend to forget that because he does good footy content on YouTube. But that he's a West Coast guy. So I was watching his sort of preview, and he was just like, I'm kind of worried about everyone except Charlie Cameron because Hoff did a really good job last year. It was like a breakout game, so it was kind of interesting that of all of the ones, you're not worried about the like 3-time All-Australian that's kicked 300 goals.
To be fair,
he's like, fair enough.
To be fair, this year, not too many people should be worried about Charlie Cameron. He's not exactly breaking games open like he has been. So,
but he still could.
He still could, and that's why he's in the team because you never know. Because if he turns it on, if suddenly he just finds a rich vein of form heading into finals, then woo-wee. But he's leaving that run a little bit late. So I guess we'll see what happens there. The other couple of players.
Anyone else? Yeah, anyone else you wanted to touch on?
Especially the last quarter. Jasper Fletcher and Kai Lohman had huge last quarters.
Yeah, it was an interesting one to see. Like Brucey start as a sub, and I think it's been kind of cool that it's just been like, who's going to be the sub? Well, it'll be this one for this or this one for this. Brucey found it hard to impact when he came on, but Jasper was really calm and composed. I think throughout the game, but particularly in the last quarter, his decision making and stuff was really good. I'm really looking forward to his career, like going forward, and the now. But I just think as he grows and becomes a little bit more like game hardened, I think he'll be really good.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And yesterday was, I think just like a real step up, especially the last couple of weeks. Where we've had those injuries down back, his role has changed in the fact that he's not just a sole sort of wingman anymore. He is having to float down back and help out there. And his ball use down back was like rather good yesterday, and especially that last quarter, that one-armed mark. And he just had a few...
And followed by the other one-armed mark.
He did
2 in a row.
He just had some really, really good moments that when the game... And I didn't feel comfortable until Neale drained that last shot from 50 that we were going to get the job done. Yeah, he just had a couple of really key moments. Same with Kai Lohmann as well, like he did in that game against Melbourne where he slotted that goal to get us over the line. He had a couple of last quarter goals this week as well that just steadied the ship a little bit to keep us in it and get us over the line.
I think with Kai, the thing that is more impressive is I think directly leading to his second goal, which I think was when he kicked from in front. He has a defensive effort at half back.
Yeah.
Like 20 seconds before that happens. His defensive efforts and his just like being around at the right times, his game sense is so good for someone that's like as relatively inexperienced as he is. So I'm really, really happy that I was kind of like proven wrong about that in terms of earlier on in the season. I was skeptical about what his overall impact could be, but yeah.
It's crazy to think.
Fantastic.
It's crazy to think that he was basically out the door at the end of last year, going to Essendon or Hawthorn or whoever was throwing the cash at him. And I guess at that time we didn't really know what we might have been missing out on. And now since, Link's gone down, I mean, he's played every game this year, which is crazy as well. But
yeah, they keep saying that. And I'm like, surely the first 5 were like as a sub, right?
Yeah, the first few, definitely. Like at least the first 3 were as sub. And then because everyone was calling, like, we need to get Kai a full game, and it happened, and he has not looked back, and he's in no danger, especially if Charlie's going to be out of the team for 1, 2, 3, however many weeks. Like,
to me, it's like, if anything, a 1.
Yeah, but we'll see.
I know that it's basically a game of spin the wheel, but like, I mean, it's a front-on tackle. Like, yeah, there's other problems with tackling at the moment, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
the amount of times where like I was pretty sure isn't it like a suspendable offense to like pin the arm,
the chicken wing?
Now everyone
yeah.
seems to be doing.
Yeah,
like
Kingy brought that up in first crack yesterday as well, because it seems to be happening more and more at the moment. Yeah. So the whole chicken wing's coming back. So yeah, it's
but there's just some weird inconsistencies because like obviously they did that whole like edict about like, okay, so if you've got one arm pinned, you have to just throw the ball at your foot and try and kick it, and it's fine. And it's like, yep, I saw us do that multiple times and get pinned holding the ball, as probably they should. But also, what's to stop someone from like having their arm pinned, having the ball, and then like throwing it at your foot, but to your mate over there? Don't know. That's me doing a little visual there for anyone playing at home. So let's not go into that. But in the end, we kind of won. People scored goals that they needed to. West Coast ended up being a little bit inaccurate in the last quarter, which was good because they probably deserved to be that. And yeah, generally pretty happy with kind of how everything went, I think.
Yeah, I mean, good to go over on a dicey field as well. Like, Optus has definitely been under the microscope for the last however many years in terms of producing injuries. So luckily we could get away with that and walk away with the 4 points, because we got a big fucking game next week against the Swans. So I'm thinking we need to win one of either the Swans or the Collingwood game if we really want to keep that top 4 chance alive, and ideally win the other ones that are winnable on paper, but you never know what this season's going to toss up. So
it's a hard thing to kind of look more than one game ahead, to be perfectly honest, because even if you do, like, you look at other games that are happening, you look at the other teams and think, well, surely they're going to beat so-and-so, but they haven't been.
Yeah.
So, where are we? Like, Gold Coast still keep Gold Coasting.
I know.
Which is weird, So
good for us.
That's made that one. Yeah, good for us, but also it just means that, they're like home records well intact when we go there in a fortnight. So it's so weird. It's such a weird game. Like, at the beginning of the season, I was talking about some kind of lightning in a bottle cases, talking about Collingwood, us, GWS and Carlton, just in terms of like, there were freakish things that were happening last season that kind of won't be repeated. And now the whole season's turned into that. It's like, what world are we living in?
It is. It's like, I'm really enjoying it, but at the same time, it's just making things so nervous. The fact that we could have finished 4th or 9th, depending on the result yesterday, is just Hawthorn they've won more games than Collingwood, but still sitting below them on the ladder on percentage because of the 2 draws that Collingwood's had, and they're the team with the highest win percentage that is sitting lowest on the ladder in history, and all this sort of weird shit's happening this year. So this is the equalization policy at its finest, and I feel like we say
It's
that every
logical
year.
conclusion
Yeah.
almost. It's just like it's never going to get any better than this. I mean, for as far as nerves go, man, spare a thought for me on an hour-long train trip coming home yesterday, not like knowing that the game was over, sitting there going like, and I was, once I heard that that Port Adelaide had lost to the Suns and we had a chance to go fourth, I was just like, don't mess this up, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And they didn't, thank goodness. Because the optics of it are so good. And I think the Lions have kind of, although they've won now 6 in a row, but they'd won 5 in a row last week. People were still kind of sleeping on them as an entity because we were sort of just middling.
Yeah.
And we were like dealing with this, as I've described it, the fruit machine going. And we've just been rising slowly as it's been happening. And now it's like we've popped out at 4th. People will be like, oh, shit. When did that happen? It's like, pay attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, Joey and Kingy, Joey, they brought it up on 360 on the Wednesday, so that, all the stats that matter in the premiership window and all that sort of stuff. I think Joey said there's five metrics you need to be top 6 in if you want to win the premiership, and we were, I think, top 4 in all of them. So, statistically, we are the second best team at the moment. Sydney's still far and away just like killing it in terms of, for and against and with the ball, without the ball, all that sort of stuff. So,
I
but
think when
games.
they were touching on it last week, they were sort of saying like over the course of the season, they were that, but in the last 6 weeks, we were well up the top and Sydney had dropped off. So in terms of the form team, we're probably the form team, but it was just, I think they were encompassing the whole round, but they always just not make shit up, but they'll come up with stats to prove anything. Like 40% of people know that.
The midfield was really good yesterday, I think, led by Oscar. He was fantastic. Obviously, Neale had another huge game, and you'd have to imagine another 3 Brownlow votes heading his way. Dunkley was great. Klug was great, especially in the first half. Ashley was all right. Bez, probably one of his quieter games, actually, for a while, but still serviceable in his 150th. I thought it was a pretty even contribution from the midfield, and as you said, like we smashed them, albeit the last quarter is when their midfield decided they were going to really start rolling the dice and coming away with clearances and at stoppages and all that sort of stuff as well. So a little bit worrisome there, but all in all, a great performance from the mids.
Also, like, not a terrible performance from your mate, Alex Witherden.
He was
all right.
Yeah, he was fine. He's West Coast whipping boy at the moment, so he shanked a few kicks that worked well for us. Like, he had a few turnovers, but he played all right.
Yeah, I mean, that said, so did Tim Kelly and so did the other guy that's Yo.
Yeah.
I kind of can't forget. Like, it was a bit like the Richmond game at times where, like, these good players are just not who they were. It's very, very funny.
It was pleasing that we didn't get done by Harley Reid. Like, Harley had a few moments, but I'm glad he didn't tear it apart.
No, there was a lot of chat going on with him and Lachie Neale throughout the game, which I thought was quite funny. And Dunkley was a good matchup for him because I think you're foolish if you're going to get done by his like fending and stuff like that. And it might have happened once or twice, but yeah, he didn't really get going. But it is exciting when he does.
Yeah, he is good to watch. But I'm glad he just wasn't that good to watch against us.
So, yeah, all in all. So, did you want to do some votos?
Yeah, let's do some votos.
Beer, 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 beer. Hop on brewerytours.com.au because beer.
Tough one to vote for this week because there was about 5 or 6 players that I thought could have got votes. So here is where I have landed. Honourable mentions to Dunkley, who has missed out, and Harris Andrews, who had a huge game, who you could tell, it reminded me of Jack Payne's, one of his first games against Richmond at the Gold Coast, where Harris thought, well, I've got to shoulder the load here and start crashing more packs than I normally would because I don't quite have that trust in Jack Payne. You could tell that he didn't go that far with it this week, but he thought, extra burden on my shoulders this week because we are down in the back line, so I need to step up. And he had a fantastic game. And it wasn't until the last quarter where Oscar Allen really got a bit of a look at it, but it was sort of not too late by then, but it was basically too late.
Dodgy free kick and one that he didn't mark in the square that he took from the square. So, whatever.
So those two definitely could have got votes. Rayner could have sneaked a vote. But for me, I've gone Neale the 3, hard not to, McInerney the 2, and McCluggage the 1. I thought Clug's first half, his first quarter especially, was brilliant. But so yeah, those 3.
Cool. Nice. Like it. I have gone Lachie the 3 because he'll just end up winning this thing. I went Kai Lohmann 2. And I went Darcy Wilmot 1.
Fair call. Fair shout.
Just a bit different because I think certain moments were important and Wilmot was pretty good. And Lohmann just does shit that I think kind of helped us win the game.
Yeah, no
the game.
No complaints there. I thought, as you said, the Keys had good games without having either of them having a great game. They both had good games. Hipwood's work rate just continues to impress, and he's hitting the scoreboard. He kicked another 2. Danaher kicked 2. There's a few multiple goal kickers, which was pleasing this week as well, including Lachie Neale. So, he's obviously going to get 3 votes this week from the umpires as well. Sneaky chance for a 3rd Brownlow, which is ridiculous to think. But as I said to you earlier this year, he's kicking, his decision making, his kicking, his ball use has come along so well, and now the last few weeks he's hitting the scoreboard. So, man, just is improving after a slower start.
I think he's almost in the team we are. He's the perfect player to pick up votes because there aren't a lot of people that are going to be picking up votes instead of him. This is what I said last year. It's the Brownlow is kind of cooked in the sense that you don't have to be the best player of the season. You have to be the best player in the most games relative to the other players playing, which sounds like absolute word soup. But if you break that down, it does make complete sense. And the thing is, in all of the games, he's the most impactful and the best player.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that if you put them all side to side in who is the best footballer thing, it doesn't really work that way. So whatever, if he wins it, he wins it. And that would be really funny. And then it would also be super weird because we'd be triple Brownlow medalist.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. What can you do? What can you do?
I mean, yeah.
But I think it's when you look at it, you see you're right with the multiple goal kickers, You're looking at it going Lohmann, Danaher, Neale, Cameron, Hipwood, Rayner. Bailey should have kicked more than 1 goal, and I'm sure we'll probably have questions about him for some reason.
Yes, we do.
I guarantee you those questions probably wouldn't come if he kicked 3 goals. Maybe they would. He should have. Every other day of the week he does.
Yeah, I mean, he is one. There's another bloke that's in the firing line as well that I'm sure.
Is it McKenna?
Yes, it is. We'll have a chat about that when we get to questions very shortly as well. But no 2s game this week. So they had the bye, which meant that Dev Robb and Jackson Pryor could make the trip over to to West Australia to see their family and to other facilities and have some meetings.
We picked that too, didn't we?
I mean,
it was really funny when we just saw the emergency list and they're both on it. It's of course they are.
Yeah,
they could have a broken leg and still be on the emergency list at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah,
it's it was basically a foregone conclusion. So, don't expect to see either of those 2 on the list next year, which will be a bit of a shame. But I mean, they want to play footy, and I get it.
Yeah. Do you reckon that they will be this decade's Lachie Neale and Link McCarthy?
Oh, I don't see.
It's not a real question. It's not a real question, you dickhead.
No, but
it's a joke.
I can see them being a
package deal.
Well, I can just see them being a Ben Keys and going to another club and playing good footy and going, we had the chance to get that, but they just couldn't squeeze into the team. So, I
was also meaning in terms of the idea of Dev Robb's probably the more proven player, but to be we'll also take Jackson Pryor.
Yeah, maybe
your mate.
Yeah, I mean,
as a package deal. That was the package. You missed the joke and went with another joke. I don't know what's going on. But my comedy is not super tight at 9:43.
Changes for next week. No 2s, obviously, to sort of run on form, but changes for next week is Stas will be back and potentially Noah Answorth. Potentially.
Yeah. Changes, I mean, the one that I think... Do you want to do the ones that I think will be made or the ones that I think they should make?
Both.
Because I think that they'll just take Brain out and put Starcevic in.
Yeah.
And I think people should get comfortable with that and not be so mad that when Thursday rolls around and then ultimately Friday and they don't see McKenna out of the team in lieu of Starcevic, just everyone just fucking relax a little bit.
I understand because they play, Stars lockdown defender, and McKenna is more your creative ball user off the halfback. But Brain's ball use is pretty good.
I agree. I don't think that it's the sort of thing that should be such a foregone conclusion, but I don't think that there's super value in just being like mad about it all the time.
No,
it's sort of like
I understand what you're saying.
I didn't think McKenna was quite as I didn't notice him being super terrible.
It's just his defensive. When our transition defense and our team defense is under the microscope, it is like his defensive efforts are leaving a lot to be desired. And Brain, not so much. Answorth, not so much. Starcevic, not so much.
Yeah, I don't think in a larger sense it really makes all that much of a difference though, because when we're getting kind of generally it'll be an outnumber the other way. And it was really well encapsulated with trying to think of which goal it was, but it was one where maybe Liam Ryan's second goal, where we got kind of beaten in the midfield. Zorko had to come off Liam Ryan to put pressure on a mark that was taken. Then he tried so hard to hold the ball up, and it was like a borderline 50-meter penalty because he knew that he had left Ryan, kind of on the side of the 50. And it's like, that's not Zorko's fault. That's further up the ground. And like, ultimately it was Zorko's man that kicked the goal, but it's not his fault. And he knows exactly what he's trying to do. And I guess fundamentally, if you have a guy taking a set shot from 45 meters from a wide angle, that's probably a good result, but they were sinking everything. So, but there are things like that where I reckon if you had our defense and you had, who are some of the really good one-on-one players, like Sam Taylor, Harris Andrews, who are some good one-on-one small guys.
Blake
if you
Hardwick, Hoff.
If you had all those guys, teams would still score against this team. I'm very confident that they would. You could have the best 6 defenders and people would still score because the structure is like fine when it's set, but whenever the ball gets turned over, particularly in that sort of when they're able to run through the midfield, and it's a defensive run thing.
Yeah.
More so than anything from our midfielders, or it's because the midfielders are going one off their man, and we saw it work absolutely horrendously in the GWS game, where it was like one person gets beaten, so the next one comes in, and the next one, and the next one, and then you're left with someone out the back. And because they're trying not to leave someone out the back, they're often leaving someone kind of alone 40 meters out in the 50. So yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong, it's frustrating, but it's also hard to kind of really see the whole scope, particularly when you're not at the game and stuff like that. For me, I like Brain.
I like Brain too, and I hope he holds his spot because he did absolutely nothing. In fact, he had a good game. Like, he had a good game and shouldn't lose his spot. But I'm inclined to agree with you that that's probably where the coaching staff will land, sort of, last in, first out policy. But I mean, I guess it would be nice to see a bit of a change, and like me and others still want Luke Beacon to have a bit of a crack at it, but I don't know how his defensive efforts are. We can see what he can do with the ball, and he can mark the ball. He's definitely taller than McKenna, and he's got creativity off the halfback. So I guess if you're looking for a like for like, he's probably the closest. But I think
Starcevic's form heading into when he got injured was really good too.
Yeah.
I think better than it was given credit for. For me, Starcevic comes in, and look, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't more interested in us having, let's say, like a better defensive mindset from some of those. Like, I'm happy with Zorko and Wilmot running amok forward.
The thing is, it's like we've adopted this in the last however many weeks. The kick mark game has really like increased for us, and that infers that it should give you enough chance and time to, as they say, defend with the ball. So while you're kicking, marking, other players are setting up defensively and guarding spaces and guarding men and all that sort of stuff. But to see us get so easily scored off against transition means that it's not quite clicking yet. And like, I don't know if that's just due to this revolving door of personnel that we seem to have had in the backline this year, or it's just a fundamental flaw in our system. But either way, things are going to really need to tighten up, especially against Sydney, because, I mean, they're the best team by a long way.
Yeah, I think the kick mark style has undone Sydney a little bit in some of the games.
Yes,
So,
I mean,
they'll know that.
The Saints did it to them.
And I think Fremantle also did it a little bit as well. It's more like games where they have quite a lot of high uncontested marks against. They tend to struggle a bit more. But I don't know. Like, it's a hard thing to kind of look at because Sydney just seems to be like wiping the floor with teams. But they also, I said quite early on that they were like quite vulnerable, and it was being shown in the start of games where they were giving themselves like a deficit to kind of come back against for some reason. And it might have been like the first game against Geelong where Geelong got out to like a 35-point lead, and I was like, yeah, Sydney won. But it was just like...
It was the same thing that happened the week after against Adelaide, where Adelaide got off to a 5 or 6 goal lead, and then Sydney still ended up winning.
Amadi decided to kick 9 goals.
Yeah, they still ended up winning by 7 goals. So, Sydney will have some changes of their own. Heaney will come straight back in, and they've got Parker and Mills back now in the fold as well. So they're not lacking. I think McInerney looks like he's going to miss with a knee. Yeah, so he's a handy player, but they've still got enough talent on the park to cover him. So I wouldn't. It might just be Heaney and McInerney out.
Yeah, well, he seems to be one that's a bit of one of those grunt players. And, we've seen in the past when you don't have some of them, the balance can be slightly off. And I know like Luke Parker and old mate Shoulder come back in, and they're kind of more of that grunt than they are like Sugar and Spice that they probably used to be earlier on in their careers. But who is that guy? Callum Mills. That's the one. Shoulder boy. Shoulder boy. So, yeah, who knows? But I just think we generally match up pretty well, and relatively confident going into the game that we'll play well.
Yeah. Okay. I can't really foresee any more changes. We're going to get to some questions very shortly, which will sort of address maybe some other changes that need to happen. So I guess we'll have a chat about that. And then I guess it'll revolve around Charlie Cameron and a couple other names we've already spoken about that are in the gun from some fans, which is, understandable. Ross, with the first question for Crisp Communications, says, will this slow considered chip mark game work against Sydney? And I guess we just had a bit of a brief chat about it then. So it has worked for other teams. Will it work for us? Maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, we don't do it relentlessly.
No.
It's more just, it's an element of trying to take sting out of the game and trying to frustrate them. But firstly, before we start, I just want to say thank you to Chris Communications. I got my sticker.
Oh, hell yeah.
From Abby at Chris Communications. Said, thank you for being a fan of the podcast. I said, yeah, sure am. So very nice there. Anyway, back to the thing. Yeah, it should work. And it's not a relentless, it's not death by 1,000 cuts. It's not like Manchester City Guardiola passing shit. It's like we do it to take the sting out, and we go quickly, and going quickly is generally our friend.
Yep.
So
until it gets turned over, and then it's not.
Yes, correct. And then it's our complete enemy.
Mitchell, McKenna's spot in the team. He says he should be dropped for Starcevic next week, and Bailey's form this season. So he's not the only one to have a bit of a go at Zach Bailey. James Barron says, Zach Bailey, Jesus. Ricky simply says Bailey with the eye rolls emoji.
I'm still confident if he kicks 3 goals, which he should have. Any other day he's kicking 3 goals and no one cares.
Yeah, you're probably right. It does paper over the cracks, but he's having one of those seasons. And the fend off is annoying a few people.
I didn't notice him do the fend off at all yesterday.
He didn't try and pull it off yesterday, but that's because he didn't have a huge amount of the ball.
He had 16 disposals.
Yeah, okay. Maybe he just sort of went under the radar.
But his efficiency was not great. But at the same time, 1 goal, 2, I don't know. I don't, I kind of feel like at this point it's a bit like the McKenna one. It's a bit like we've talked about it and nothing's really changing. And it's like, I'd rather him have a 1 goal, 2 game than a no goal game, and the chance that he probably should have kicked 3 goals. because that's better output for mine than him not. But I don't know. He's not coming out of the team, and I've said it before. Any other team would pick him up like hotcakes. An expression, isn't it?
Sure. Vince, heading from Melbourne to the Gabba for the Swans game. Given it's a 1 p.m. start, how many beers can I have during the game so that I'm upright for dinner at 7? So some maths there.
Where are you going? Where are you going for dinner?
Yeah, we'll come along.
I know. Where is he going for dinner?
Don't know.
Not to like. Is he just going to get like a pork knuckle across the road?
I don't know.
If it's a pork knuckle, then I think you're good for 9 beers.
And then more at the German club. And also a quick shout out to Brad, who won our double pass to the Sydney game last week, who is also flying up from Melbourne for his first ever game at the Gabba. So that's really cool for Brad. So I hope he enjoys it and that it doesn't leave a sour taste in his mouth. Vince, it really depends. If we win, as many beers as you like, responsibly, of course. And if we lose, as many beers as you need.
Oh, dear.
And dinner's an afterthought.
Oh, dear. Brooksy. No. Next question.
All right. Minchie, do we need Answorth or Robertson and McKenna for... It says Praw. Maybe Pryor? I don't know.
Pryor?
Yeah. Just team changes, I guess. I can't see... unless we've get injuries, Devs, I don't think is going to be playing AFL again this year. And
Probably not.
Pryor, we've shown we've got enough.
I don't think Pryor's going to be playing if Brain does what Brain does.
Yeah. And, yeah. Okay. Couple of questions here. Iago and Ben. Charlie Cameron in trouble after his tackle on Duggan. What do you reckon the likely outcome for Charlie is? There's a secondary question from Iago here. How do you rank the remaining matches in order of difficulty? How many do we expect to win with so many backline injuries? So, first of all, Charlie, I mean, just from the eye, didn't look bad at all, but at the end of the day, someone's left the field with concussion. It was a fierce tackle. Dumping, maybe. Who knows? Like, honestly, the MRO is just such a, as you said, a real shock wheel at the moment. And, like, as dirty as Isaac Rankin was last week, 4 weeks was probably a bit much for mine.
I think it's the intentional and the off-the-ball thing with Rankin, just that made it worse than what it was. If that's happening in play, it's probably not quite as bad. But, it's so weird. Like, because he's not really pinned any arms. He's not, slung him. He's just front-on him. And then the momentum has taken him. Like, the guy's lost his feet.
Do you think... after the Jake Lever whole fiasco and circus that was, the good bloke getting him off, is that going to play into it at all? Like, the AFL's not going to let that happen again. If they get the chance to rub him out, they're going to rub him out.
Yeah, probably, but I don't know. Like, it could be a week, but I don't think it should be.
I don't think it should be, but I think it might. I mean, Heaney's wasn't a week. Let's be honest, that wasn't a week, but it was.
Heaney hit him pretty hard.
He did.
Like, he can't... Like, I don't buy into the, he's fending off to do a thing. He, chopped. He went to chop the arms hard and the guy's head was there. And it's, a bit like the Andrew gaff on Andrew... Angus gaff on Andrew Brayshaw. The gaff on Brayshaw one from way back when, where, he didn't try and punch him in the head, but he punched him in the head.
Yeah.
Because he swung his arm hard. And, fair enough, couldn't happen to a nicer bloke in Jimmy Webster. But I'm glad with the going back to last week that the Norton and Thatcher one was just because that was as much as Norton running into him with his gargantuan nose than anything. So it's do I think that the Heaney one probably was a suspension? Probably not. But he did it. There's force in the way that he slung his arm backwards and I think probably more the issue is that you should be afforded to miss a game and not be ineligible for the Brownlow. But I don't know. It's sort of too harsh a punishment for too minor a crime, particularly when you got dudes punching people and stuff.
Yeah.
That are negligible damage. It's cool. What if you were 1 inch worse and it smashed his face?
That's crazy. It's crazy.
Hogan.
Isn't it?
I hate the gut punches. Hate them. Zach Butters is paid about $400,000 in fines at this juncture, but like, give him 2 weeks and it's fine.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
So I don't know. It could be one, could be two, could be none. I don't think it's anything, but a guy leaves the field with concussion. But was it the Optus ground that we know from Barras is really hard?
Yeah. I'll genuinely be interested to see what happens with that. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a week or two, but fingers crossed he doesn't. But at this point in time, like, is Charlie missing a week going to be that detrimental? The question is, if he does, who comes in?
Well, it could just be the case of playing Logan Morris from the start and then having a different sub. So it could be Answorth coming in as a sub.
Yeah, but we're not really covering forward line that much as well. Like, we did get a couple of smallish forwards in the mid-season draft in McLaughlin and Craven, so it'd be a wild call up to get one of those in if Charlie misses, but it is a like for like, if you will.
As for the remaining games, Sydney is difficult. Gold Coast at Gold Coast is difficult. St Kilda at Stadium with a Roof is relatively difficult, but annoying, but potentially fine. Giants at home is kind of difficult. Collingwood at MCG, difficult, and Essendon at home, probably all right.
Yeah, it's crazy that seems the most winnable, Essendon up here. Sydney and Collingwood are the two that really stick out as the danger games of where we could get a huge reality check. Gold Coast at People's
I don't know,
Coast
man.
well.
The Gold Coast for me is
Yeah.
the biggest one that sticks out more than anything. Gold Coast and also the Giants as well for what they did earlier on in the season.
Yeah, well, I'm really hoping that we're carrying a chip on our shoulder from that and we don't let anything like that happen again, that's for sure.
So if you can, send the team some Doritos.
All right. Let's keep pressing on with questions. Bill,
I just want everyone to know that you did smile at that for everyone at home. It wasn't just a complete ignorance. You did smile. So as bad as the joke was, a crack on, sir.
well, just touching on that, JC says after Swans, what is now our hardest game remaining? They're saying the Gold Coast as well. So, yeah, it is definitely a danger game. Loz, defending transition is the one. We need to start locking it up in our forward 50 and giving our defence time to set up. Still comes back out way too easily. I'm going to have nightmares about Nick Blakey transitioning from D50 all week, and I think you're not alone there. Definitely me too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know that I like Nick Blakey. I think he's a good player, and I would
fantastic.
have him in a heartbeat at the club. But yeah, do you get someone to run with him? Like, does Jared Berry go with him in this weird mirrored match?
It's a tough one.
I know we didn't want to see like Jared Berry going into the forward 50 to play on Clary like a few weeks ago, but he's got run, he's got size, probably doesn't quite have the same element of like smarts potentially, but I don't know, just stick with him.
I mean, there's so many
The thing is that if I'll say the coaching has been more liable to change things as the game has been going on, which I have really enjoyed this season, because so often has it just been an element of just banging your head against the wall, being like, what, come on. Like it's right there in front of you. Do it. Push the button. Come on, the button's there, and no one pushes the button.
Yeah.
And here we are. So, like, if something does happen like that, or it could be a revolving door of like, who do you tag, Warner or Heaney or the other guy,
Golden,
or the other one, Goulden. Like, I think it could be the case of if you just like chuck Fletcher on Goulden for the whole game. Got a bit more size, and he's got the run. Goulden's trying to run out games a la Langdon at the moment, which is kind of scary, but also Goulden's got significantly more output than Langdon, so that's even scarier. Will your mate Sheldrick be there? Probably not.
Sweet little Angus Sheldrick. He had a good game last time we played him.
You were like, it's a pretty cool name, and I'm like, yeah, cool name, dude.
Yeah.
Sheldrick.
Yeah, a little turtle boy.
sounds like a Pokemon. Yeah.
Bill says, were we happy with Joyce's game? Simple answer is yeah. Yeah,
it was fine.
For the amount of heat that he came in with, absolutely. I couldn't really tell who he was playing on for a majority of the game. We had Chief largely taking care of Oscar, and Lester was sort of swapping between Waterman and like Cripps at times. So the fact that there isn't a West Coast player with a huge bag of goals next to his name, brilliant. There was no hair pulling out moments with Joyce with ball in hand. There was no obvious turnovers that led to goal like that. And I know that that's a low bar from an AFL level player, but that's a good game.
It was fine.
Yeah.
And also the thing is, even if it wasn't fine, what can we do?
Well, he's got to back it up this week against the Swans because they'll have McLean, Amati, and Logan McDonald all sort of floating through.
That's fine.
So take one of them.
It would be different if it was Kerno, Mackay, and Buddy Franklin.
Yeah.
Koning, whatever.
Grolt Jam. No question. Just give Big O some love.
Grolt Jam?
Yeah.
Who the fuck is that?
Just someone on Twitter, mate.
Oh, okay, right. So it's not someone's actual name.
I don't know. That's
you normally say from Twitter. You don't normally I was like, is this person's name is his first name Grolt and his second name Jam?
All from Twitter this week because it's just the easiest way to get questions on a Sunday night. No question, just give Big O some love. Yep, and absolutely, he's putting together a really good couple of months. I
like his little fringe he's got going on at the moment.
Yeah, he's killing it. Dennis Lohman is the player we were all hoping Bailey would become.
Yeah, he's a bit physically different profile, a bit more aerial.
Yeah,
but I can see where that's coming from. I think Bailey's probably more. We were hoping he'd be more of a Dane Zorko style, or at least I did early on in his career. I thought he would kind of slot into that mid forward pest kind of thing, and seems to not have the energy, the erratic, had too many Red Bulls that Dane Zorko had early on in his career. But how old is Bailey? 24? Yeah. 24?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm having a stab in the dark there at 24. He was picked up in the same draft as Rayner and Starcevic.
So Starcevic has already gone bald, so could be anywhere, really.
Yeah, somewhere between 22 and 25, but I'm going to lock in 24 just arbitrarily.
All right, fair enough. Well, so Dane Zorko only joined the club when he was 23, let's say, and it took him a little bit of time to find his strap. So maybe it's one of those. I don't know.
He's 24.
But okay. So if he doesn't pull his finger out, then we'll be having some harsh words in the next season or two. But at the same time, he'll come out on grand final day and kick 2 bloody blinders, and everyone will be like, "Oh, fair, there he is, cool."
And I suppose if he does nothing but does it all on grand final day, then sure, that's about as much as you can hope for.
It was a bit weird that he did kind of peak after that Gold Coast game where he kicked 7 goals, and then after then it just his career dipped.
He has flashes. Last question from live. Jazz and Motti, the 2 most underrated players in the AFL, both seem to be solid performers almost every week now. And a little clip for McKenna on the way out. Is McKenna going to finally make way for Brain or Beacon? I'm sure there's other players more underrated, but yeah, they don't get any mention whatsoever. They're just consistent, solid AFL footballers, which is really, really good.
I wouldn't necessarily say underrated in the grand scheme of things because they're entirely not mentioned. You have to be mentioned to be rated or underrated, I suppose. Within the club, I'm sure that they are. I think probably more from your side, you've been like, oh, Fletcher's had a quiet year. And I'm like, yeah, but he's just working on his craft. It'll come good.
Yeah.
And back after the season, it started to show some fruits. And I think also with Wilmot is people tend to forget that he's essentially just a second season player. Yeah. He played, 3 games in his first year, the Richmond final, the Melbourne final, and then the prelim. So, if he was any other second year player that had locked in his spot in a premiership contending team in the back line, come on.
Yeah. No, he's had I wouldn't be surprised if Darcy Wilmot finishes, I would say at least top 10 for BNF at the end of the year. He might push top 5 because he's just been consistent all year.
Also, Fags loves him too.
Well, yeah, of course. He's a lovable little scamp.
We all do. He's a little Rudiger.
He's a little Rudiger.
That's going to be his name now, Rudiger. With his little beard and stuff now, it's so scrappy.
All right, that'll do things for questions for Crisp Communications. Get yourself your own Brisbane Lions Fancast sticker. Details at brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. All right, let's have a look ahead to Sydney. We won't spend a huge amount of time on this one, but it's lately a team that we've matched up reasonably well on. Obviously, that opening round 2021 where Zach Bailey actually got off to a flying start, but then Sydney pegged it back, and that was one of Goulden's first really best good games I remember
Best good game.
looking at him going, right, who's this 21 fella?
Was that actually his first game?
I don't know if it was his first game or his second year.
Are we gonna Chris Judge this bad? Chris Judge. Are we gonna Chris Judd this bad boy?
No, I think he was already in the system for at least a year, but that was a game where I took notice of him and didn't really know too much about Errol at that point, but I was like, wow, he's not bad, that fella.
He isn't.
But
yeah.
But since then we've beaten them at the SCG a couple of times. We played them in the preseason this year and made them look fairly ordinary, but what do you take away from that? Probably nothing.
All we need is Hipwood and Charlie Cameron to kick 7 goals at a quarter, and it'll be fine.
Oh yeah, easy.
Isn't that what happened? Like they kicked 7 goals in 3 minutes or something, and it was really stupid. That seems like something that would have happened. Brooksy, have you got any classic games that you want to talk about? Because, talking about matchups and this, that, and the other, we kind of all know who's going to be basically playing on everybody and everyone's going to be running around playing football. But are there any fun things that you want to think about that don't include Barry Hall kicking a goal after the siren?
There isn't a huge amount of standouts. There was that one back in 2009, maybe, where Brownie kicked a goal on or near the siren to draw.
Draw?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that could have been our last draw, actually, before the Adelaide game this year, potentially. There was obviously a final where Ackermanis got us over the line 2003, 2002, one of those games.
It wasn't 3, because I've got 3 loaded up right here.
Okay. Then maybe it was 2002. Other than that, there's been no real standouts. I remember last year when we played him at the SCG, could have even been the year before, where Buddy put in a 10-minute effort that really got him back into the game in maybe the third or fourth quarter. But other than that, we walked away with the win. So they're just one of those teams that we tend to match up all right with, but more often than not, when the game's up here, it appears to be raining. And I think to myself, oh, shit, Sydney contested team, they're going to blitz it in the wet.
Yeah, they're kind of more like an out to in to out sort of style contested ball, though. They're very highly skilled. So it's a little bit different to the old Paul Roos style where you were like, oh, great. They're basically just World War I British people in trenches having a great old time with trench foot. And where these people that are possibly civilians or Russian or something along those lines. But this analogy is dying in a hole, as is the trench. But yes, they're a bit less kind of fiercely contested than they previously were, I feel, and much more skilled. And, they got some really good kickers of the ball.
Yeah, amazing.
Really good. Also, how's about that Perth thing and it just pouring with rain? One day of the year that we were there.
Well, last week as well, when Richmond went over there to play Freo, their banner got fucked up by the rain and the wind. So it's obviously the time at the moment, but it didn't piss down for too long because then the sun was out.
It's bloody Cyclone Tracy over there. Josh Tracy, Prune Tracy.
Prune Tracy, very good. Okay.
So obviously the one that I've got is the 2003 prelim final. Obviously.
Yeah.
One where Ash McGrath scored a goal from halfway or almost there or thereabouts.
Right.
But, this game, we were under a bit of pressure. 3-quarter time, we had a 3-point lead. And Sydney kicked a point in the last quarter, and we kicked 40.
Not bad.
So, pretty good. It's also, for those keeping score at home, where Nigel Lappin got his ribs broken.
That's right.
But, yeah, Lynchy was there. Pike broke the game open. So, not Ackerman. Ackermanis tended to have, kind of not great times against Sydney because of your mate, Hey Basil. Brett Kirk or whatever.
Well, no, he was famously head-to-head with Simon Black every game.
Actually, sorry, who was the guy that he used to get really ticked off with?
I mean, it's Ackermanis, basically anyone.
But it was I remember his on the couch, not on the couch, open mic, where he'd be he would push back and the guy would just kind of wilt. And he'd almost be like, come on, stand up for yourself. What are you doing? And it would really frustrate the competitive part of Ackermanis's brain. Wowee, what a team. But yeah, so that was good, that preliminary final.
Yeah,
good
we
one.
haven't...
aside from that...
We haven't come up against them in finals recently, have we?
No. I also quite liked a couple of years ago where we beat them at the SCG for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
It was unfortunately where Joe went down with a shoulder and
That's
old
right.
D McStay kind of stepped up and kicked a few goals. Yeah, it felt like a big step, I think, at that time.
Yeah, well, that
'Cause
was...
it might have been that and Cardinia were the last two places we hadn't won at.
Yeah. It was nice.
Still
It was
haven't
like
won at Cardinia, but
early on in Fagan's coaching career where, like, one of the first things he did was just, like, tick off all the hoodoos that we'd got going for us. So I remember that being a big one as well, yeah.
and we should have obviously won at Cardinia, but didn't. Thanks a lot, Blitzarves and umpires.
Yeah.
Zach Bailey probably would have missed from there, according to everybody. Oh dear. Yeah, no, that was a great game. That one, the one at SCG was good. But yeah, I'm still pretty confident we match up relatively well against Sydney. But yeah, the ones in the 2000s don't sort of lend themselves otherwise to these like kind of fun games. They were sort of just frustrating and annoying. Lots of like playing in molasses.
Yeah, no, you're right. And this is definitely a different Sydney that we're seeing this year. But they're obviously not impervious. They've dropped a couple recently, and they lost that game to Richmond early on in the year. So it can be done.
Yeah. But yeah, go team.
Go team indeed.
I don't know what else to say. And after last week's debacle of me just sort of seeming to become really tired in the last 10 minutes and taking forever to respond to anything, I just feel really bad about that. So sorry, everybody, for having to listen to me.
Well, Go Team's as good as anything. Head to the website, brisbaneLionsFancast.com.au. Make sure you like, subscribe, review, rate, all that sort of stuff. Helps us keep ticking along, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully, cementing ourselves a position in that top four with a huge win against the Swans. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Would be great. Just before we go, I want to make mention, does Dwayne Russell mention the crowd more than any commentator, possibly to distract from the fact that he's not actually there and doesn't know?
You know what the most annoying thing that Dwayne did yesterday, and it shit me to tears, and you could see it coming a mile away, is when Jared Berry got the ball.
Was it him drinking his milk or something?
I mean, obviously that, but 17 and a half minutes left in the game, and I think we're about 3 or 4 goals up at that stage. Probably 4 goals up. And Dwayne takes it upon himself because Jared Berry gets the ball and goes, 17 and a half minutes away from celebrating his 150th game with a win. And like, Dwayne, what the fuck are you doing? There's 17 and a half minutes left. You've just said it. And then West Coast go in and kick the next 2 and have a third shot on goal they missed. But, like, shut up. Can you not?
But I did find it just so funny that he mentioned the crowd all the time. It's like, bro, you can only hear what they're giving to you in your headphones from the audio mix.
Yeah.
Like, you're not hearing anything from your, like, milk-laden Red Bull Coke lounge that you're in. Like, come on. But yeah, no, you mentioned the liking and subscribing, keeping the lights on here and allowing me to have 3 drinks at once.
So do all that. We'll be back with the Brisbane Lions Fancast next week. And don't forget the Brisbane RecLink Community Cup. That's happening in a couple of weeks' time, 28th of July at the Evan and Wolves Juniors Ground in Enoggera. So if you've got nothing on the 28th of July, I know it's the same day as the Q Clash, which is on later on that afternoon. If you're not planning on going down to the Gold Coast, you'll have time to do both.